It'd be hard to argue that zombie games are a dime a dozen. Why is it that so many gamers are excited for the sequel, Dying Light 2? Stay Human from Techland. This is a game that's been delayed a number of times and has promised a narrative and player-driven choice model that seems almost like it's impossible. Well, my hope is by the end of the video, you'll get at least my initial thoughts of this, because the razor's edge of pleasing those who want to return to form an additional time in a world that they love, and those who want something completely new is about 2 angry Twitter posts away from one another. Got to spend a good deal of time with the review version and wanted to give you guys some impressions after a number of hours. Subscribe if you like the video, and you can always see my Dying Light 1 coverage as well if you want to see a review and get a little refresher for what this game actually is. I want to tell you guys that the footage you'll see here are the trailer footage cut up to sort of explain some of the things that I saw, and it won't match up perfectly, but Techland didn't want any new footage that wasn't already out there for me. So, let's begin. This will all be as non-spoilery as humanly possible. Dying Light 2, as we all know, it's a zombie apocalypse-themed action, role-playing, survival horror video game, and it takes place 20 years after the events of Dying Light. It features a new hero who was apparently gifted the same Cirque du Soleil abilities as the protagonist in the original game. This dude has not seen a bit of crockery he doesn't want to treat like a perfect 10 on some parallel bars. Just monkey swinging between posts, climbing across creaky wooden lattices as the only remaining light from some safety UV lights fade out behind you, and you see red eyes from zombies replace that. That's the juice to the game. It's what we liked about the original, and the reason so many people are excited for this. Dying Light 2 continues the tradition of those high-stakes, moment-to-moment movements. And of course, tied to that brutal, blunt weapon mayhem, the feeling of swinging over a wall, jump kicking a zombie, and then hitting his friend's neck so hard with a Kmart machete that it just flies off and spins away like a top, are all here, and you see it within just a couple minutes of the game, because this thing starts out banging. It drops you into an open world with nothing, following along with another traveler as you learn the ropes of movement and getting caught up a bit on what has happened in the world. But that is a very short time frame before you're already fighting zombies, and I love that. It just jumps in. 20-year leap forward in time has changed the feeling to the game world. It's changed it dramatically. While the world is still dangerous, it's also slowly been claimed by these various factions that you find and locate within the city. Friends and enemies and friends of enemies, as major decisions you make adjust the resources of the groups in the game, those guys will change into different groups that either love you or hate you. And Techland has been very open. They want to change the world when choices are made. But a huge problem with so many games like this is that they suggest that changing the world is going to happen or adjusting the world, but it's like friggin' Invisalign of game design. It's just sticking back the malformed pieces of the world into some aligned form and pretending that it's still not rotten to the core. And then it ends with gamers realizing not much has actually happened and they really haven't impacted anything. So far, I can't say that's actually true here, and it looks like the major changes are going to keep coming, and a couple of them are major. We'll have to see if that's true or not, and if the gray shades of the decision-making simply roll out into some boring black and white replication of change that we are all so accustomed to in games like this. But I have to say, so far, so good. Here's some of the things that worked, and then we'll talk about some of the things that didn't work. I like and noticed instantly there was a ton of environmental storytelling that even though in my Walking the Walk I covered for Dying Light, there was some there seems even more here. And whether that continues on and on and on throughout the entire game, I'm not quite sure. But what we see as you explore and gain access to new locations, there's always some tidbit of information, some weird setup in a home where once you look around, you realize some serious crap went down here. Even in the beginning, there's this mission when you're taking out zombies inside of a huge house. And after being done, you start looking around and realizing something absolutely horrible happened here, and it does tie back into actual humanity's past, but I'll let you guys discover all this for yourself. You realize that those people who attacked you, those zombies, probably weren't random zombies, but were in some way related to the situation that occurred many years prior. And a lot of games start to peel that back as you go further and further into the title, but the way the developers have made this game and the program that they use, their city builder, it seems like this is something that will continue pretty much any place you are in the game, and that's what I've seen so far. Also, as you guys know, I just love environmental storytelling in titles like this, whether it be Mad Max or Fallout 3 or 4, when you go into a location and there's that sense of past and future past, things that have occurred prior to you getting there. And then when you do get there, you start piecing together, just by visuals many times, what actually occurred. I enjoy that kind of stuff. I'm a huge fan of just looking around and seeing what kind of nefarious deeds have happened prior to me getting there. I enjoy it, and I'm stoked to say that at least for now, I'm seeing a lot of that. Also, regardless of who you're working for, working against, or just working on finding in this open city location, there is a lot of verticality as well as depth and breadth to the various parts themselves. Each of the game's 7 districts in the city seems to be owned and operated or loosely controlled by different warring groups. And so far, the changes when you go into those locations in architecture or just the way things are built, the different ways in which the people dress, is something that you notice. Whether you're fighting humans or hordes of zombies, though, is that your character pretty much a badass. You're consistently killing enemies with weapons that have the durability of saltine crackers. You're just smashing and bashing and slicing zombies' heads off. Suddenly the weapon breaks, you put it away, you grab another one and you keep going. You sometimes wonder how a city actually keeps having zombie problems when you spent the last 9 hours treating zombies' heads like a 3-week-old lawn in a controlled cul-de-sac. You drop weapons that break, you pick up what you can, and keeping a steady eye on enemies around you as well as weapon durability is highly important. Now, Aiden himself, the main character, starts out with the ability to climb and leap around, but like the prior game, as you unlock movement skills, you start being able to do incredible stuff, and you find yourself easily moving around enemies, taking them out, then dropping 2 middle fingers and while running away as a special zombie type shows up and you're too low on health to take them out. That feeling of flexible combat is absolutely replicated here. Technically speaking, this is final code with a patch coming prior to the review embargo, fixing up some odds and ends. I haven't actually had any bugs or real issues so far with the game. And one of the first things that I noticed is that it was much smoother in movement between objects. You still get stuck here and there or make a bad jump, but there was a huge step up in the fluidity of everything. The developers have stated that to make the game look and feel smoother, they have almost 3,000 parkour animations, and that tells out. It also feels more quick than the original. The dodge feels faster. It's much easier to figure out timing for the dodges and for perfect parries, which stun the enemies and leave them open. The original game's floatier parkour does seem to remain a bit here, like the world's made of rust-colored marshmallows cut out to look like railroad cars, old buildings, and so forth. There's one place where the animation helps, though. When you barely grab an edge, you brutally crash into items, a bit more like Nathan Drake in Uncharted than what I saw in the last game. It just feels a little bit more brutal at those moments, but the animations do go a long way in telling you and selling you on the movement and the contact. And luckily, it's pretty smooth as well. On the PC, the game has a large number of settings with choices between various newer upscaling levels. It's got ray tracing and options to dial in the picture, based on how many scalped video cards you bought from questionable MySpace sellers. So far, it's running really well for me. It's got a couple drops here and there. When you first enter the city, you can also see all these newer structures built on top of the older city itself, many times to elevate the various factions and normal populace away from the dangers of the zombies below. Now, we saw that in the original game, but it actually does feel advanced here. It does feel like 20 years may have actually passed by. People have died prior, and they've continued to build up and figure out ways to take care of the populace that exists there. You can see the line of modern man putting that society back together on the bones of one that's failed before. Graphical change in a game world driven by the gamer, that's the desire that gamers have to enact change in the world. That sense of interaction and immersion is the highest currency in the industry that sometimes seems like it just has 2 empty pockets called morality and player choice, and neither one has any change in it. So far, Dying Light feels really familiar to the original in terms of what you want to do, what you can do, that movement, the navigation, and even the combat, with the exception of some significant increase in all of those when it comes to the polish and just the feel of it. It's eminently familiar, yet at the same time, I've found myself experimenting more and trusting the game's movement system far more than I ever did in Dying Light 1. While Dying Light 1 had a refreshing romp through this world made of climbable ledges and zombie head hedges that just needed to be clipped, Dying Light 2 seems a lot like the original but larger in scope and much improved. And if that story continues to pan out with huge changes, that's pretty awesome. The decisions so far that I have had some traction in the game world as well. We'll have to see if that remains, though, because we have seen front-loaded games before. And as I continue to play this up to and including on the day of the review embargo, we'll just, have to all cross our fingers that continues. One place that Dying Light 2 has made some changes as well is accessibility. I got to add this because it's not just some of the accessibility you've seen in other games. They have a large number of options for reducing motion sickness. This is the dreaded head bob that was so difficult to actually fix in the original game. It can be adjusted as well as weapon swinging, and FOV slider is there, widens that horizon and that horizontal view so it feels less like you're being birthed out of a womb camera and more like you're actually seeing through a character's eyes. When you see sequels, you're always wondering what's going to change, and you're always crossing your fingers that the developers are able to enact change, polish and increase and add to, but at the same time not reduce the original experience. So far, it feels like they actually may have hit it. Time will tell, though. So far, time has told me that Dying Light 2 has a solid foundation for the changes that the dev team has stated that they wanted to do from day one. And for a title that's been delayed at least once for a year, we are looking at a title that has had a little bit of development hell. So the idea that this may turn out right is awesome. So those are my impressions. I would love for you guys to maybe check out the Dying Light 1 review I did, or the Dying Light 1 Walking the Walk. If you don't know what a walking the walk is, it's a bit like a technical analysis critique, but a lot of it is based around art, something we don't see a lot of channels talk about art, about game design, stuff that I've got from developers who've worked on games, as well as just developers in the industry, poking away at their brains trying to get information, and then I walk around a game world and talk about the various different things. So that's it for me. Subscribe if you can. Check out Twitter. Follow me there. Also, we've got a Patreon. It's an amazing place. We're now doing morning daily news in the Discord Patreon, where you can jump in about 5 a.m., 6 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, where everybody starts talking about the morning news, and you can discuss it there and have yourself a awesome group to discuss news in video games with, as well as streaming D&D games, streaming video games, and just talking about games as a whole. Peace out and enjoy the rest of your week.